All right, welcome you guys. This is Emotional Healing, Cosmic Insights and Tools. And I'm excited to share this information with you guys. This is some sort of next level information for those of you that are already on this journey with me, looking at your cosmic blueprint, AKA your human design and your gene keys, and diving into the foundational information. And this is something that I've been really passionate about sharing for a little while now when it comes to emotional healing. I think that there's a lot that we can learn through the lens of human design about how to really be healthy in our relationships. But before we can do all that, we have to really kind of understand the dynamics of how emotional energy really works. And I think that human design is the perfect vehicle for actually beginning to have a grasp and understanding of that. So we are going to talk about that today. So through the lens of human design, there are two types of emotional beings. And I know that most of you guys that are already here, that are watching, you already know which type of emotional being you are. If you don't know and you're watching either live or on the replay, you can really kind of probably discern without actually seeing your chart based on what I'm going to share with you guys right now. So there are two types of emotional beings. Pretty much half of the population is what we would call defined. That means that their emotional energy is internal. It comes from a place from within them. And it's actually a really big part of their personality and how they show up in the world with their ability to make decisions about things that they are faced with. That is the defined emotional type. The other type of person is open or undefined, and that person is externally receiving emotional energy from their environment, from their people around them, and all of that emotional energy, the information that they feel, is being amplified within their own awareness, and that's then expressed through however they decide or choose to feel and express that. But the main difference, so you guys know, is that half the population is internally generating this information and broadcasting that energy out of themselves. And the other half of the population is taking that emotional energy in from other people and amplifying it within their own awareness. And that's the two different types and how they're different. So there's a pretty significant experience difference when we look at people from these, through this lens. And so again, I'll go through what it means to be emotionally defined. So if you're not sure if you're emotionally defined, then these are some questions that you can ask yourself. So you might be emotionally defined if you take a long time to get emotional, but once you get there, it can take days to get over it. You might be emotionally defined if you blame people or situations for making you feel a certain way. You might be emotionally defined if you routinely suppress or stuff your emotions, feeling like you need to hold on to them. You might be emotionally defined if you learn from your emotions over time, if you give yourself time to mull it over. If you don't really act on it in the moment, but you wait and mull over how you're feeling, you might be emotionally defined if you find that you learn from your emotions. And you have learned over time that it's wise not to act on your emotions because in a day or two, you know that you will feel differently. So that one's a really huge one. If you are emotionally defined, you might already know that it's wise not to act on your emotions because you know that in a day or two, you're going to feel differently. Okay. Also, you might be emotionally defined if whenever you make a decision based on your first emotional response, you react, the result leaves you frustrated, angry, or bitter. So if you can think of any times when you've made a decision based on how you're feeling in the moment, you react and it leaves you frustrated, angry, or bitter. You might be emotionally defined if you avoid confrontation and truth because you have been taught that your feelings don't matter. And you might be emotionally defined if you're very good at analyzing your emotions and letting them guide you in making decisions that are best for you. So these are all possible traits of somebody who's emotionally defined. I'm going to talk about what it means to be emotionally undefined or open. Okay, so a lot of you here have that going on as well. And so if you're emotionally undefined or open, you might be able to identify with being emotionally empathic. So you feel the emotions of people around you and you are aware, you know that what you're feeling emotionally is coming from those people. You may have wild mood swings, but only when you're around other people. Whenever you walk away from an emotional situation, you can drop it and just move on. You might be emotionally undefined or open if that's the case. And you might be emotionally undefined or open if you feel like people are angry or upset with you if they express anger or frustration in your presence. It sometimes feels like it's about you, even if it's not. You might feel that. In addition, you might be emotionally undefined or open if you avoid confrontation and truth because you're afraid of the emotional reaction of others. It's not so much that what you're feeling is the problem, but that what's coming from other people is the problem. You might be undefined or open emotionally if you're touchy or nervous about certain emotional topics. Can't tolerate talking or feeling or looking at emotional things. You also might be undefined or open if you don't really know how you feel, or you just don't feel anything when you're alone. You could be undefined or open if you are completely overwhelmed by your emotions. Like they just get so overwhelming that it's just intolerable. And you might be undefined or open if you always feel the need to control the emotions of others. So if you notice that you are wanting to calm somebody else or soothe other people emotionally a lot, that might be because you're open or undefined emotionally. So each different type of person is going to have conundrums, right? We all are naturally designed to have these things that we're here to, challenges that we're here to overcome. And emotional conundrums are probably at the top of the list, right? So for the defined being, it's about the not self. So it's about not being aligned with your truth. It's about not being aligned with your strategy and your authority. So most of you guys that are paying attention, watching today, you know about your strategy and authority. So for a defined, emotionally defined being, not acting in your strategy, whatever that is for you. If it's a generator, it's waiting to respond. Projectors waiting to be invited or waiting to be recognized. Manifestors informing, and reflectors waiting a full lunar cycle. Actually, this won't be the case for reflectors because they're always going to be undefined. But for the rest, if you have a defined emotional center, then it's going to be, the issues are going to arise from not being true to yourself in your strategy and your authority, which is emotional, listening to your emotions, riding the emotional wave, paying attention to what you're discovering as you ride the wave and asking the questions. What is this emotion here for? What is it telling me? So when a person is not doing those things, that's the not self, and that can cause the emotional issues to be out of control. For the undefined open being, it's about conditioning. And so how does conditioning happen? Well, again, conditioning is, generally something that we experience in our openness. It's the result of this external information coming in, being amplified within our own energy, the way that our mind decides to analyze that feeling. If it's coming in, from, say, for example, somebody who's in their not self, they're conditioning you with their emotional dysfunction, and you're amplifying that within yourself. So that's where the conundrum lies for the emotionally open being. So the struggle, again, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, that when we are emotionally defined, and you might know people who are like this if you're not, so this is, it's all good information. If you can think of someone who is emotionally defined and you're not, then again, it's because they're out of alignment with the truth of themselves, right? So they're lacking self-awareness. They might be emotionally repressed or suppressed. That was me. I did not know until probably 3 or 4 years ago that I was emotionally repressed. If somebody told me that I was emotional, I would get mad and be like, no, I'm not. That doesn't describe me at all. Until I realized through this work, working with my design and learning about this, that I am 100% emotional. And everything that I ever thought about myself that went against that was inhibiting my ability to make decisions for myself, right? So making decisions without using the inner authority, which is your emotional inner authority, that's not self. Being unaware that the best personal strategy for showing up as yourself, so being unaware of what that is. So a lot of our friends that don't pay attention to this information might not be aware that there is a better strategy for showing up as themselves. And blaming others or blaming situations for the feelings that they're having or feeling blamed by others. So it goes both ways. When we are emotionally defined beings and we are expressing or feeling our emotions and we're suppressed or repressed, whatever the case may be, in this not self type of energy, we're going to be blaming whatever that external thing that we think is the problem, the trigger, the catalyst, whatever it is that's external. That emotionally defined person will most likely be blaming that for how they're feeling and not realizing that they're internally needing those emotions to help them to make decisions. Now, the struggle of the emotionally open or undefined is taking in and amplifying the incorrectness of others, right? So, like I mentioned before, if a person is not self and they're not aware of what their emotions are there for, and they're not aware of how their emotional state impacts the open person can be taking in that incorrect emotional energy and amplifying that. And we've all been in those type of situations, right, where it just gets out of control. So the emotionally open person can distort the emotion that they're feeling, especially if they have an open head. They can be, conjuring meaning out of their mind, which is not correct. They can overreact to the emotion. They can misunderstand the emotion. And they can believe in the feelings and assign meaning based on their conditioning. So conditioning can be also what you've learned, right? So it can be just from your upbringing, your family traditions, society, cultural norms, right? All of those things can condition us. And so we can think, especially if we're open, we can be feeling something and think that it means something that it doesn't mean based on that conditioning. So when a not self person, someone who is defined and broadcasting this not really healthy emotional state, when they meet the person who's open and amplifying and receiving, this is what happens in those open centers, right? So we amplify, distort, overreact, and misunderstand. This is a very dysfunctional type of energetic exchange that's happening. Okay, so this is what happens when everybody's out of alignment with their own truth. So in this little picture, we're looking at a guy over here who's defined, he's inside the brown triangle, defined emotional, and he's a little upset, you know, maybe he's anxious, feeling some of these emotions that are here in the background, feeling some tension, feeling tired, just in a bad mood. But, you know, he's dealing with it. He's looking like, well, I'm just here. But how is that energy impacting the emotionally open person? Right? This person's over here feeling the amplification of those emotions, and it can be overwhelming. They're sponging up this emotional energy and holding it and carrying it with them. And so this is, again, we're not self and we're conditioned. And this is sort of the negative dynamic that can be going on. So when we are looking at this and wanting to see, like, where is the miscommunication, where is the misunderstanding, or what is wrong, what is going wrong in this scenario, we can compare this to emotional intelligence, right? So when you look at if you dive into sort of like the realm of emotional intelligence, we're talking about really self-awareness. And so we have at the top here the recognition of the self, and the person who is self-aware, they might have emotional self-awareness, they have accurate self-assessments, they have self-confidence. And what that does is when you move that over into the social setting, then this person may have an additional ability to be empathic, to have organizational awareness, to be service oriented. And also, when you move this down into self-regulation, this is about self-control, being able to be adaptable and transparent, all of those things that we consider to be really healthy aspects of emotional intelligence, right? And then obviously in the next box, we have relationship management. And so all of these things that it takes to have good management skills. So this is a really important, you know, aspect of maintaining and being an active person, contributing in, you know, healthy ways in the world, right? This whole idea of emotional intelligence goes into like business, and it goes into our, you know, our work and home environments, and being able to, like, you know, have that really healthy interactions with other people. This is about being correct in terms of human design. So I have this diagram or this picture of gears, right? So when we're correct, the gears all fit together properly. And you probably have heard me say this before. So in human design, we have correctness, and it's mechanical correctness or incorrectness. It's not about judgments of right or wrong. It's really like, how does my energy really work? And what is it that I need to be doing to make sure that my gears are turning properly, so that the energy that I'm putting out into the world goes out in a way that's correct. And whatever, if I'm open, if I'm receiving that energy, it's coming into me in a way that's actually correct, that I can utilize in a correct way. So to be truly self-aware and socially aware, you must know about your inner strategy and authority, and the strategy and authority of others. Okay, so that's my little takeaway, right, from the work that I've done with this human design stuff, is really about strategy and authority. And as we learn about our own strategy and authority, what it takes to be correct on our own energy, we learn also what our close family members or our friends or people who are around us are, you know, how they're designed to be. And as we begin to learn these things, the gears and the pieces and the parts can fit together, and we can begin to, you know, start to see how, okay, this is making these relationships work better for me. So, correctness. For the defined being, correctness means that I'm aligned with the truth of myself. So if you are emotionally defined and you're really, you know, every day waking up going, okay, how do I get aligned with my truth? Okay, well, through my strategy, for me, my strategy, waiting, responding, my authority, paying attention to my emotional state and being careful that I'm not putting out crazy impactful stuff, like we all have our emotional states. And so I think as a defined being, it's kind of important to pay attention to like, how am I showing up for other people? Maybe, maybe not. And then for those with undefined or open, it's the correctness is I am a screen and not a sponge. So when you're open, emotionally open or undefined in any center in your body graph, you can have the option of sponging up that energy, carrying it with you, letting it, kind of wreck you. Or you can go, you know what? I realize that I'm open in this area and I can step back and just observe, what is it that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling this? And with the awareness that it's probably somebody else that's bringing me this feeling. Now what can I do with it? So that's the beauty and the superpower, actually, of having that openness and having the awareness and going, okay, like this is something that now I can manage because I know the truth of it. So in human design, again, your strategy and inner authority are the guides of the mechanics of correctness. Awareness of your strategy and authority changes the frequency of self from not self to I am. And it begins the deconditioning process of the undefined and open centers to remove the sponge and create the screen upon which we can observe without negative impact. This doesn't happen overnight, as you know. It takes time for strategy and authority to eventually decondition us. And of course, in human design, it says it's about 7 years for that whole process to take place. I don't know. I'm not sure what to say about that, but that's what it says in human design. So I am defined, and I am aligned with the truth of myself. When a person is in this correct state of being, life experiences have brought clarity on how to be authentically you, right? Your life experiences are showing you how to be yourself, including studying your design. You wisely and adeptly navigate life with guidance from your emotions, if you're emotionally defined. You never make decisions while you're emotional. You've just realized that that is never a good idea. I'm not ever making decisions while I'm emotional, whether it's good, happy emotions, or sad or angry, whatever, it doesn't matter. As a defined emotional being, it's always correct to wait before you decide or make any decisions on those emotions. And the emotionally defined, I am defined and aligned with the truth of myself person will take the time to wait, feel, and understand themselves before acting. So for those of you that are here today with defined emotional centers, these are the strategies for being really healthy emotionally, okay? So also, no blame, no shame in what you feel. The emotionally defined person who's aligned is mindful of the impact of their emotions on others and on themselves. They're willing to feel the depth and breadth of their emotions. So that was a tricky one for me, eventually learning to take baby steps and open that emotional door a little bit more every day to actually feel what I feel. And there was a point in time where it got super intense. And I was like, man, I can see why, like I've never been, a big coping mechanism type, like with drugs or alcohol or anything like that, probably with food or binging or, kind of escaping in ways. But definitely I could feel the difference when I really opened myself up to feeling all of my emotions and how big they are, and how I just spent so much time avoiding having that experience. And also, when we're emotionally defined and aligned within the truth of ourselves, we know that not everyone is designed to feel the way that we feel. So there are going to be some people who will need their emotions, who will need to take the time to feel what they feel, to step away for 24 hours, whether they're intentionally diving into their feelings or whether they're just giving themselves time to balance out, whatever the case may be, that I can honor that in another person because now I see that that is something that I need. And for those of us who are open or undefined, we can be aware that our counterparts that are defined need that time and space to feel what they feel. And those of us who are open, the mantra is I'm a screen and not a sponge. And when you're in that space, as you see, this person is kind of sitting back and there's a big screen in the foreground, and this person can sit back and just observe, right? So life experiences have brought you clarity on how to be authentically you. You take in, amplify, and observe the emotions of others. You move away from emotional people and situations to regain inner focus and clarity. You allow the emotional waves to come and go with non-attachment. There's no truth in the emotion really for the open or non-emotional person. It's just a wave of energy that you can feel, and you can let it come and let it go. In addition, the open person is a screen and not a sponge. You're aware that as an empath, you cannot always interpret or assign meaning to what you feel. You can feel it, but you might not always really know what it means. Your heightened awareness of the emotions around you make you masterful at helping others identify and resolve emotional issues. So that is one of the superpowers that comes from an open center, right? Is having that heightened ability to help other people resolve emotional issues. So now, here's our guy again, and he's kind of feeling a little down in the dumps, but you know, he's kind of doing his ohms over here, he's breathing and just kind of taking it all in and accepting where he's at, even if he doesn't really feel that great, knowing that the emotions are his. This is my stuff. It has nothing to do with what that other person did or said. I know I'm just triggered, and I'm going to ask myself what this really means for me, or I'm just going to sit with it and do some other things until I can think clearly about it. Maybe tomorrow I'll know better, right? So that's this guy over here. I am defined. And then this person now is open, and she's looking at, oh, wait a minute. I am a screen, not a sponge. I don't have to take in that emotional energy. I can just notice, look, I can see that this person is over here doing their breathing and paying attention to how they feel. And that's just how they're feeling right now, has nothing to do with me. So no blame, no shame, no suppression, no interpretation, no arguing. These are two completely different types of emotional beings that are living in a space of correctness, as one person who is emotionally defined is observing their own emotional state, not projecting it or, you know, thinking that there's something else outside of them that's in control, but they're being aware that that's what they need to do is pay attention to what they feel. And then we have this other person over here who's going, okay, I can feel and notice that other person's going through something, but I'm observing it. I'm not taking it in. It doesn't belong to me. It has nothing to do with me. Okay. So this is where you will find out whether you are open or defined. So whatever this little triangle is that's circled, this person here is open or undefined, actually, not open, undefined. This person over here is defined. And again, it's about 50% of the population that has either one of those things going on. So there's a lot of work to do, in my opinion, with emotional healing, emotional well-being. And there are a lot of tools that I've come across in the time that I've been doing my work So I had put this presentation together to see if there was anybody who's interested in learning more about emotional healing through this lens, and also with some other tools for emotional healing. So I do have a 3-week program, and what I want to do is just find out if anyone's interested in doing a 3-week program on this topic. I don't have a date or a time set for it yet, but if people are interested in it, then I would definitely, create a time and a slot for sharing more information about this, because I really feel like, there's so much that's going on now emotionally with all the people that are, in fear and all these different things that are going on, that it's really important that those of us who are sort of on this leading edge start to really get a grasp of what's going on emotionally within our own self, and how we can then, sort of show up in the world in this very emotionally healed, emotionally centered, grounded sort of way, and be the guides for everybody else. So again, it's a 3-week process, discovering your conditioning and looking specifically at your chart and seeing how you're conditioned emotionally, where and why. In the second week, looking at correcting the alignment through strategy and authority and practice, which is a tool that I've been using for a while. And also then in the third week, it would be using the best tools for clearing emotional baggage in thought, feeling, and words. And I have a few different techniques that I use for that, which are really cool, that work really great. And then, realizing that once we know better, we can do better. So I liked this little kid over here with the shovel going like, oh my gosh, I got to dig into this. And then there's the guy that's kind of digging into it. And so you can dive in and do a deep dive if you want to do that with me. It'll be $99 for the 3 sessions. And again, it would be based on interest level. Of course, all the recordings would be in my website portal, so everybody can have access to that, plus any materials that we create. So that's pretty much what I had to share today with you guys. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share and open it up for any questions, if you guys had any questions that you had that you wanted to ask. So let me go ahead and stop the share. Oh, I did that already. Okay, and I will go ahead and open it up if you guys have any questions.
I don't have any questions, but I'm definitely interested in the sessions.
Okay, very good. I will send you follow-up information on when those will start. And yeah, just see how many people we get interested in that. So thank you guys all for coming. I don't know if Amber or Jennifer, if you guys have any questions. And feel free to unmute or type in the chat, either way.
I guess I do kind of have a question.
Oh, sure, go ahead, Jonah.
So with the defined characteristics and the undefined characteristics, I kind of found, when you were going over, I don't remember all of them, but I found areas in both where I'm like, oh yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, that's me. So, I mean, can somebody be kind of mixed between the two?
Yes, technically you can, because we can have open gates. Even if we're defined, we can have openness in the gates. So what that really means is that you're not going to have the intensity of the emotional energy coming in as much as someone who's open there.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's probably opportunities to notice, other people's stuff. The way that it really showed up for me, this was like a really profound aha moment that I had, where I'm kinesthetic, right? So I can feel other people's stuff, but what I'm feeling isn't necessarily emotional. So I walked into my job one day and I started feeling nauseous. And then I walked away from this one particular girl and I felt better. And then I walked back over to where she was and I felt nauseous again.
Oh,
And I
whoa.
was like, what's going on? Like, why do I feel nauseous? And she goes, yeah, I feel nauseous too. And I was like, oh. So I walked away from her again and it went away. And I was like, okay, is that her? And I walked back over there and I'm like, what's going on? Are you okay? And she was like, the manager had just left. And she was like, yeah, I just got into a really, kind of heated discussion with the manager. I feel kind of sick to my stomach about it. So for me, I was like, wow, okay, so I didn't feel the emotional, like if I were open emotional, I probably would have felt like the emotional energy of whatever had happened. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel it emotionally. I felt it kinesthetically. So I knew something was wrong, but I had no clue about the emotional component because
Hmm.
I'm not designed to pick that up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So those are the situations where you'll start to notice, what am I picking up on? And are you defined in your chart or are you open? Do you know?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. I believe I am defined.
I think you are too. I think you are. So really it's going to boil down to noticing what you truly feel and observing people who are open and observing how they respond emotionally to things. There's a pretty drastic difference. And one of the big things for me was noticing that when people are open emotional, which a few of you guys on here are too, you might can attest to this or not, but when people are open, it's like they can let it go. They're going to be the ones telling you let go, just let go, let it go. And
Ah,
when we're defined, it's like I can't just let it go. I can literally not let this go. Even if
yeah.
I wanted to, I can't let it go. So does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So very
Thank
cool.
you.
But yeah, we'll dive into it even more, and we're going to probably touch on it some more inside the foundation classes as well. So Jennifer, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Sorry, taking a while to get out of the pocket and open. And it must not have been meant to be said because it got left. So I'm sure it will come back to me. I might have a follow up tomorrow during the 2 o'clock stuff. So.
Okay. All right. No worries. Yep. And if you have any questions, you can always message me or whatever. How about you, Amber? Did you have anything you wanted to add before we sign off?
Sure. I have a pretty good understanding of the emotional centers. It's all true. What you were saying just now made me laugh. My husband he gets all fired up. He's defined emotionally. I'm undefined. And I'm just like, let it go. And he's like, I can't. No. Drives me crazy.
Yes.
Anyway, are you going over tools to handle emotions, especially as being undefined?
Yes, yes, I will be going through. There's 3 tools that I want to share in that class. And so one of them you're already familiar with is the emotion code.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will go into tapping as well as the complete alignment technique that I use to align with the human design energy.
Okay.
So I don't know if I've shared that one with you or not.
I don't remember. Complete alignment technique to align with energy.
Yep.
Okay, that sounds interesting. Is
Yeah,
that something that you created?
it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a very cool technique. It works really good.
Okay. Interesting. Is that for both defined and undefined?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
I'll think about that.
Okay, well, I will keep you posted as to when, if I decide that. I'm gonna have to put it out there a little bit more to see if, people are interested in joining that or not. So we'll, I'm doing my generator thing, waiting and responding.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And as always, I appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you
Okay.
so much for doing this.
You're welcome. See you later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.